This is Michael Popok, and I'm at the intersection with an update about Georgia and all those election cases brought against the state election board and its new rules in two different cases. We've got an appeal already by the Republican Party. They're trying to skip a step, skip the intermediary appellate court, go right to the Georgia Supreme Court, and let me break it all down for you right here. First of all, you've got the cases that were brought by Democratic groups and some groups of former Republicans that are believers in the Constitution, that believe in transparency, like former Georgia Representative Scott Turner, who formed a group called Eternal Vigilance Action, EVA. I love the fact that that was founded by a Republican, and it has a great name like Eternal Vigilance Action. So they filed a series of cases. There's more than a half a dozen of them. I've reported on them here on this new Legal AF YouTube channel and on the Midas Touch Network. And there's two in particular that were prosecuted by Scott Turner's groups and the Democratic National Committee and the local Georgia Democrats. And one case went up to Judge Cox in Fulton County, which is in Atlanta, and the other one went up to Judge McBurney. And there's been some confusion about them. Let me tell you about the two cases, and then I'll tell you about the appeal. In the two cases, Judge Cox had a fully briefed case that came up to him with evidence and with witnesses after an evidentiary hearing or a trial, in which the state election board, who in September, now controlled by MAGA, three MAGA people, Janice Johnston, Rick Jafaris, and Janelle King, changed the rules of the game right in the middle. I mean, as we were voting, as Georgia was voting, to require, they set up some rules about vote counting and some rules about vote certification, to throw sand in the gears, to give Donald Trump time in case he loses Georgia to go already file lawsuits. And so the case in front of Judge Cox was about the propriety of three major rules passed to favor Donald Trump. One, requiring hand counting of all votes. This is the vote counting rule. The night of, over 2 days, every precinct, every voting machine in Georgia, which has like 4 or 5 million people, to be hand counted for no good reason. Whole bunch of hands in my ballots. Get your hands out of my ballots. Just slowly, only to slow down the process and give Donald Trump time to go file some crazy lawsuit. That's the vote counting, the hand count rule, invalidated by Judge Cox after a full trial. I'll tell you why in a minute. He also invalidated rules about certification. And the certification rules are allowing any board member at the local county level, you got the state election board, you got the county election board for that county, any board member, anyone, to use a reasonable inquiry, it sounds reasonable, to get every piece of paper delivered to them before they vote to certify. Reasonable inquiry and an examination rule. So you've got the vote counting monkey wrench, and you've got the certification monkey wrench. The certification monkey wrench is to provide an advantage to, if there's only one MAGA on a county board, they can do a lot of mischief. So it empowered, in case MAGA was in the minority, they got the certification rule. And when MAGA's in the majority, of course, they've got the hand counting rule coming down from on high at the state election board. Judge Cox did a full case and ruled that all of those rules and all those last minute 7 new rules by the state election board in September the 20th are invalid. They were improperly adopted. They don't have the power, the authority to do that. He said in his order, they think they're Napoleon, who put the crown on his head and declared himself king. That really had to be done. Those rules had to be changed by the General Assembly, the legislature of Georgia, not by these 5 or these 3. 3 of them, by the way, total MAGA. So MAGA that they got called out and complimented as pit bulls by Donald Trump during his rally in August in Georgia, in case you had any doubt. So Cox finds that the rulemaking process is so outrageous that he, in a final order, declares them unconstitutional, illegal, and void, and with all caps instructions that every precinct and every county board shall ignore them. Final judgment stamped. Almost at the same time, within a day or so, There was another case going on with Judge McBurney right next door. I don't know what floor they're on in the Fulton County Courthouse. I'll have to look it up. But in the same courthouse. Now that case, because there's so many cases that were filed, came up to him and wasn't consolidated. You might be thinking, wouldn't it have been more efficient to consolidate all these cases in front of one judge so you don't have potential for conflicting decision-making? Yes. There's no other way to put it, but that's not how it happened. McBurney gets the case, but he gets it in a different posture. Not as a full-blown case, not on trial. He gets it as an application for an interlocutory emergency temporary restraining order or stay. It's a whole different cat. There you have a temporary restraining order, then a preliminary injunction, then you get the trial eventually. So he's much earlier in his process than Cox because of the request that was made by the plaintiff in that case. He says, on a temporary basis until he can hear the full evidence at a preliminary injunction hearing in October, he doesn't like the hand counting rule either. He thinks not because it was illegally passed, but that there's no time to implement and it hasn't been properly implemented, so he puts a pin in it. But then the next day or the day after, Cox says, I got a better idea. I got this. All of the rules are invalid, all of them are unconstitutional and illegal, and all of them are void. So, of course, and we did the reporting on it here on Legal AF and on the Midas Touch Network. Of course, in the last day, the Republican Party doesn't like that result. So they have filed a direct appeal to the Georgia Supreme Court. There's some very narrow grounds where you can skip the intermediary, the lower level appellate court, and go directly to the Supremes. Every state generally has a intermediary appellate court, more than one if it's a large state, and then to the highest court of that particular state. Everything I'm talking about here, for those that are kind of following along, is state practice, not federal practice. But it's up to the Georgia Supremes, and we'll find out early next week whether they're going to allow a direct appeal to the Georgia Supreme Court. They may or may not. It's up to them. There have to be certain factors. There was an application. They walk through the factors, why this is so important and such a public need, and voting is coming up, and it's an emergency, help, like that. And so the Supreme Court in Georgia is like, yeah. So my gut is they're going to take this direct appeal. But they could say, no, we need a more full record, and we're a certain type of appellate court of last resort. It's got to come up. Go to the appellate court. I think it's the first that sits over Fulton County. Go there first. And you can go as fast as you can, and then it'll come up to us. And you got time. We got 17 days. Or less, because I don't know how you roll out these rules in such short amount of time. So I'll continue to follow it. Come back here on Legal AF. You need to find us on YouTube or tell your friends. Tell them it's Legal AF MTN for Midas Touch Network, at Legal AF MTN. But we call it the Legal AF channel for good reason. And I'm sitting here as the chief curator at the intersection of law and politics, and I'm bringing on some great new commentators, some from the Midas universe, some you've never heard of, and hopefully you're enjoying, like Court Accountability and Court Accountability Action and their research team, focusing on corruption in the federal court system up to the United States Supreme Court on the federal side. So glad you're here. Keep coming back. We're doing these 5, 6 a day. We got a new show about the United States Supreme Court called Unprecedented. What else would we call it? We're doing that once a week, me and Dina Dahl, or Dina Dahl and me. And we're also doing the Legal AF podcast. You can find it here as well. So I'm glad you're here. Tune in next time. It's Michael Popok, and I'm reporting. In collaboration with the Midas Touch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel where I'll be curating the top stories at the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and free subscribe at Legal AF MTN. That's at Legal AF MTN.